An update to the card component, we added some transition here and we actually simplified the setup by moving everything in one div right here. Whenever the card is hovered, it will appear in a more, appealing way, just like that. Alright, so now to create a special card for the dashboard, and so instead of really rendering the same card from the home page, we're going to create a different component called a dashboard card. And instead of card here, we will use dashboard card, and we will implement that right here. So we say temple dashboard card right there. And now the dashboard card, basically from the beginning, it would be similar to the same card or the card from the homepage. So we can simply copy the card from the homepage like this one and go back to the dashboard to paste it right there. So here. Okay, of course we will make adjustment to the card. First of all, we don't need the verbose variable because we will show the actual content of the card right away instead of making it on hover, just like that. And we will remove the X show. This is the first adjustment. The second adjustment, we will actually implement an edit button and a delete button. So an edit and delete functionality. And to do that, we will create a variable called card. This card will be a copy from the item that is coming from the for loop. So to copy the item data inside another variable here, because this would be useful for us to actually update the UI right away if the user, for example, update the card. Then we create our variables. So for example, title would be the item, so a copy of the item.title. Same thing goes for the content, would be a copy of item.content. We can then use these variables to actually show the title and the content just like that right away, because we have them now in the X data, other variables that will help us, for example, the loading state, because each component would have its own loading state. This is useful to update the loading state of the card itself. And you have another variable here, for example, called edit mode. And this will detect if we are in edit mode or not. And if we are in the edit mode, we can show the text inside an input field that the user can edit. And if we're not, we can show the text just like this. Then we will create a function that will detect changes. And we will call this function, for example, has changes. This function will simply just detect if the current title is the same as the card.title and if the current content is the same as card.content. This will help us detect if any changes happen to the card so we can update it. So to do that, we just return if this.title, so the current title from this variable, does not equal this.card.title, or condition if this.content does not equal this.card.content. So whatever either of these conditions is true, this will return true. This is for the has changes function. Now we will implement the update card function. And this will be an async function called maybe update card. Set the loading of the component to be true. Now we will check if the card actually has changes. To do that, we will set an if not this dot has changes. So if there's no changes, we will just simply return or disable the edit mode. So we do go ahead and say this.edit mode to set it to actually false. And then we're going to return. So we're not executing any request if there's no changes. But if there is any changes, we will create our try block or try catch block. And here we will create a constant called record. So this will be the record, the new record that is updated from the request that we're currently writing. Await pp.collection. We're accessing the collection of cards right here. And then we use the method update to update them. The update method takes an ID of the record that you want to update and an object which maybe implement the new fields that you want to send to that record. So the record would be this.card.id and an object would be an object just like that and has the title which will be this.title and has the content which will equal to this.content. Just like that. Update the current card. So this.card will equal to the record coming from here. Disable the edit mode. So this.edit mode to also be false. After this, we will maybe catch any error. If any error is occurred, we will console.log that error. And finally, we'll update the state of the loading. So this dot loading will be false. This is the update functionality, and we can check the update functionality if it's actually working by implementing it right here. Now, to implement the functionality of the update request, we need to actually have some input fields, and we need to show the input fields only if the variable edit mode is true. So first of all, we're gonna say that this content here does not show up only if the edit mode is false. So only if not edit mode, you can show this content. And we will create another div here that houses our input fields. So a div here. So if the edit mode is true, this content will be shown, and we will have an input field here. This will have the value of our title. So for example, X model here will be title. So we can update the title based on the input, and we can have the same class from here. So we can display the input field in a similar style to the actual tag here. So this is the input field for the title. Now we want another input field, or maybe text area, for the actual content. And this text area would be for the content. We can remove these tags, and we can give it X model to be equal to content, and maybe the same class of this content. Now we want to actually implement the button of the edit mode. So the button that will trigger the edit mode and the submit of changes. And we will do that right here. So after this div, we'll create the div that houses our buttons. This div would have a class. So inside of this div, we'll create a button tag, and inside of this button tag, we'll maybe write the edit. So on click of this button, we would check if the edit mode is actually true. So if the edit mode is true, we will update the card. So we will run update card function to update the card function, because this means that the button is already clicked and we're already in the edit mode, so we can update the card. Else would be to make the edit mode to be true. So we would actually update the value of the edit mode itself to be true if this button has not yet clicked. We can also add X text binding to this button to change the text based on the current mode that we're in. So this text would be edit if we are not in edit mode, but if we're inside the edit mode, text of this button would be submit. Inside the div that houses our button, we will give it a class, and we will give the absolute class, and maybe top 2, and the end would be 2 as well. Some styling for the button itself. So we have a class here. This class would be, for example, PG to be gray 800, and the text to be white. Then we would also implement some padding on the Y direction and padding on the X direction to be 4, for example. So we need to actually add the relative class to our div right here. So relative, add some roundness to the border radius. So maybe rounded would be MD, and we hit save. Now if we click the edit button, we can see that we can edit the actual card and maybe add another something here. Text of the button actually changed to submit instead of edit, as you can see. And when we click submit, the actual content is updated. And when we refresh the page to make sure that the content is updated, is actually updated. So this was how to implement the edit functionality for our card in the dashboard. We would also remove the mouse listener events from here because we don't need them. We're not going to use them anymore. And now this would be our dashboard card with the update method. To add the actual button for the delete functionality, add another tag here, and this tag would be the delete button. This would be styled maybe in border and has the same PY and PX, and maybe would have a rounded as well. I will give the border some colors. When clicked, activate the delete card function, but the delete card is not implemented yet, so we will implement the delete card function right here. So after our update card function, we will create a new function called delete card, just like that. This function will be the function to delete our card. And to delete a card, it's very simple. Before we implement the delete functionality, make sure that inside your cards in the admin UI to edit the API rules from the old API rule, which was to check the request user, to this new API rule where we actually check the request auth ID and make it equal to the user, because we can access the user of the actual card that the request is made upon, houses the same ID of our user, so we can do the authentication this way. This is a simpler and better way, and it works also with the delete rule because the old way doesn't work with the delete rule. So make sure you have these rules updated, and now we can create our function. First, we will set this loading state to be true, and here we will try deleting the card. And to do that, we go access the collection of cards and access the delete method. And the delete method will just take an ID, and this ID would be this card.id. As simple as that, we have deleted our card. Now we just make sure to catch any error and maybe console log them. And finally, we would update the loading state to be false. And now if we refresh the page, of course, save the file and refresh our page, we can see another button, which is the delete button. I don't know why this edit button doesn't allow us to have the rounded class. So rounded MD, I don't know why, but doesn't matter. So here we can see that we have another button which called the delete button. If we click this delete button, well, nothing happens because we haven't implemented a way to actually re-render the UI after the delete is happening. So if we refresh the page, we can see that this card is gone. If we go back to the database as well, we can see instead of 4 cards, now we have 2 because I deleted one while testing. So this is the deleting functionality. To update the UI after a card is deleted and to actually delete it from the UI as well, we will use a custom listener event and we will dispatch a custom event from our delete component. And to do that, we will go ahead to our load items, the function that actually loads the current items in the cards. We will go ahead and add a variable, an argument to that function called reset, and we will set the default value for this argument to be false. If the reset value is true, then what we will do is reset the page number and reset the items to be an empty array. And this will help us reset the items so we can see the newest items. Make sure that we will add a custom event here. So here this syntax is a listener for a custom event. The custom event you can create here whatever you can call it. You can call it modified, items modified, created, you know. This is a custom name for the listener because it's a custom event that we're going to create, and it listens to this event on the window context. So now if the custom event is fired, what we will do, we will load the items and we will give it the value of reset to be true. So we will load the items, but we will actually reset the items as well. So we will see the new items. Going back to our delete card, we can add a dispatch, fire a custom event, and we will call this event the same name that we called it in the listener, so items modified. This will help us cast a new event, and then we will listen to it from the component that actually display the cards to load the new cards. And if we want to check that, we will go back to our, of course, we will refresh the page to take the new changes, and we'll go back to our cards. And here we can duplicate some cards to create some dummy cards that we can delete. And now after creating these cards, we can go back to our dashboard, refresh, of course, to see the changes. Here we can see that we have 3 cards. If we delete this card, for example, watch what will happen after deleting this card. It's gone from the UI as well. And the same will go for this one, right? So now we successfully updated the UI after a delete event is happening. We will fire an event from here and we will listen to the event from this grid or with the function that loads the actual card, and we will reload those cards, based on that event.